With the midterms coming up and a new inflation estimate scheduled to be released next week, the White House is now making deficit reduction a core part of its intense effort this month to convince voters of the economy, and that the economy is getting better. It marks a pivot, that is. Biden campaigned on wanting to be a transformative president. He pushed for massive spending packages throughout the 2021 year, and played down concerns of inflation to boost these proposals. But now the president sounds more cautious about big government spending. The pivot started at his State of the Union speech earlier this year, and during his speech, Biden said, "My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit." By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. Inflation has gotten steadily worse and stayed high since then. Biden rolled out a three-pronged approach, one being deficit reduction to wrangle inflation. He's also discussing the deficit in speeches and addressed the country about it again earlier this week. The federal deficit is the amount of money the federal government spends in a year's budget beyond what it has collected in revenue. The shortfall gets added to the country's total debt, and the United States has run up a budget deficit every year since the early 70s. It ran its largest deficit over the years of 2020 and 2021 because of the crisis. So as unemployment dropped, the nation's overall economic recovery sped up over last year. The deficit dropped in 2021. An even bigger drop projected is by the end of 2022 this year. Over the last few months, Biden is taking credit for this drop in the deficit in his State of the Union address. As gas prices remain record highs, New York has become the last state to suspend its gas tax in an effort to give drivers some relief at the pump. The suspension of the 16 cents per gallon tax runs from June 1st through the end of the year. The national average for a gallon of gas hit $4.62 for regular unleaded gas on May 31st. Diesel gas prices hit a record high on May 18th at $5.58 per gallon. In New York, gas prices hit a record in late May as well, at $4.93 a gallon. The climbing prices comes as millions of people are set to hit the road on vacations over the summer. At the federal level, the Biden administration, at the end of March, announced the release of 1 million barrels of oil. Folks, there is some good news for the monthly benefits. Lawmakers are now urging Biden to pass an executive order that would help out Social Security beneficiaries. Bernie Sanders announced that there will be a Senate hearing next week focused on expanding Social Security, as he and the defenders countered claims that the popular program is headed toward insolvency. While a report released by the Board of Trustees of the Federal Old Age and Survivors Insurance showed that Social Security has a surplus of $2.85 trillion, Sanders said that benefits should be increased for retirees. This is an expansion that could easily be paid for with the rising cap on payments into SSI by wealthy Americans, who contribute at a disproportionately low rate compared to most people. Sanders said our job is to save and expand Social Security by making the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share of taxes. Richest country in the world, no senior should live in poverty, and every American should be able to retire. An estimated 50% of Americans aged 55 and older are living without retirement savings.
So far, we've done a good job of trying to strike that right balance between solving for inflation, but also keeping things affordable.
Are you going to continue to raise prices on items like goldfish and canned soup?
Well, certainly only if inflation continues to go up. And I think right now, with the pricing that we announced in April, that's our third.
Stocks are heading south again here into the close. We're still at the worst levels of the session. We're down now more than 1%, though, on the S&P. Scott Wren joins us, Wells Fargo Investment Institute Senior Global Market Strategist. Scott, what do you tell investors and clients to do on a day like today? Are you a buyer?
Well, I tell you, Sarah, you have to have an outlook that's longer than 3 or 6 months if you're going to be a buyer in stocks here. Really, since the beginning of March, we've been reducing risk in portfolios, particularly for people who have a very short-term view, or they have a cash liquidity need over the short term. But if you're
is never acceptable, Senator Booker.
That's really sobering information. I appreciate your comments, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate some of your comments at the top of the hearing about how we are evolving as a society and understanding about a lot of the harsh penalties that came out of the so-called war on drugs need to be reexamined and relooked at. I'm really honored to sit before a bipartisan panel where you in many ways could set an example for our country about the need for us to come together across partisan lines and the terrible tribalism that seems to be gripping our nation, and begin to move more towards common sense and comedy. And I'm just grateful for all of you and your willingness to serve. Mr. Reeves, I'm most partial to you just because of your haircut. But I just want to ask two clarification questions to Ms. Wong and Ms. Murray. And Ms. Wong, just to start with, you're currently an assistant U.S. attorney at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. Thank you for your willingness to serve in such an important law enforcement role. And you're serving now as the Chief of Violent Reduction and Trafficking Offenses Section. You would continue to be employed by the Department of Justice in this role as a prosecutor while you hold this important position on the Sentencing Commission. And could you maybe, for a lot of people that might have some concerns, talk about what measures you might take to avoid what might be a perception of conflict, and then help to create whatever the reasonable wall is between your work on the commission from your daily work as a prosecutor? And do you believe that there are or might be some inherent conflicts of interests, given the commission's policies will have a direct effect on the cases that you're dealing with?
Thank you, Senator. Should I be fortunate enough to be confirmed to this commission, the role to which I've been nominated is by statute a part-time position. My hope would be to continue to serve as an assistant United States attorney if I am so able. But what I would stress, Senator, is that should I be confirmed, I would pledge to approach the work of the commission as my own person and not as an employee of the Department of Justice. And nothing about my experience as a prosecutor would preordain how I consider or tackle any particular.
Roman is here from South Florida Water Management. We have Hallie Goldstein, Audubon, Florida. We have Sheriff Carmine Marceno from Lee County. We have the mayors from Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach. Holly Smith and Ray Murphy are here with us. We have the next president of the Florida Senate. Where is she? Is she here? Kathleen Pasadomo? Yes or no? Okay, she did not make it. Ray Rodriguez, is he here? Ray Rodriguez is here. We have Representatives Gia Lombardo and Spencer Roach are here. And then is Cheryl Meads here? Oh, good, good. Thank you for coming. So we appreciate it. We're here. Last week I signed the budget for the next fiscal year, which starts July 1st. And so we did a lot of great things in there. Last week we were able to highlight some of the things we did to make sure that we have a record surplus, which we do in the state of Florida. We vetoed out of $100 and some billion, we vetoed $3.1 billion, and no governor had ever vetoed $1 billion before I became governor. So it was a record.